Hi. Today we're talking about rectangles and squares, the two most basic elements of geometry. Now, you might be saying, I know what a square and a rectangle is. What more can you tell me? Well, there's a lot more hidden behind this, even though it all seems very basic. Let me give an example. So squares, you might say, look like this, right? They're boxes. They're, squares. And rectangles, here's a rectangle. You might say, okay, I know what these shapes are. What more could I possibly need to know? I might say area. And you might say, okay, well, I still know that, right? A square, it has sides. But in a square, all the sides are the same length, right? So the area is just the side times the side. But since they're all the same length, it's just the area of one side squared. The area of a rectangle is easier. We have a length and a width. We say the area is the length times the width. Pretty simple stuff. You might say, okay, we're done. No more rectangles and squares. We don't have to talk about this anymore. And you would be right, but there's still some more that we'd be missing. For example, how many angles are in a rectangle or a square? Well, if we look on, we see that there are 4 corners, 4 vertices, vertices, as we've been used to talking about them. What are their measures? How do we know that? Well, here we have 2 lines kind of meeting like this at a perfect angle. These are actually always right angles. And remember, when we talked about right angles, their measurement was 90 degrees. The same is true for the circles. All of these here are 90 degrees. Now, if you remember back to your Algebra 1 class, and you were trying to explain this, these are a lot like perpendicular lines. So perpendicular lines, they hit and they form a right angle. But these lines aren't extended on to infinity. No, they're the same thing, except they're capped at a point. When they meet and form that angle, they stop. They're perpendicular line segments, which form right angles. Now, let's go back to the question I asked at first. What's the measure of a rectangle or square? Well, even though that's kind of a loose question, we can still figure it out. We know we have 4 right angles in every single rectangle or square that I will ever draw. So, since we know that each rectangle is 90 degrees, and there are 4 of them, then the sum of their angles in any rectangular square will always be 360 degrees. Interesting how that works. 360 degrees, the same thing as a full circle, is in every single rectangle or square. Interesting to think about. And it'll have a lot more relevance as we go into further shapes. But for now, this is rectangles and squares. Every shape that we work on in the future will be built off of them. So even though this video is short and simple, we're going to be covering a lot more ground thanks to this. So thank you. I hope you enjoyed this, and I hope you have a great day.